Hello friends, my name is Madhavi from Jain College of Engineering, Belgaum. Today I will discuss about bottom-up approach and top-down approach in nanotechnology. In nanotechnology, there are mainly two types of approach for the synthesis of nanomaterials. The first one is top-down approach and second one is bottom-up approach. Top-down approach discuss about the slicing or successive cutting of a bulk material in order to get nano-dimensional particles. Bottom-up approach refers to the stocking pile of material from the bottom, atom by atom, molecule by molecule, or cluster by cluster. And these two approach we are going to consider methods in fabrication of nanoparticles. In bottom-up approach, smaller components of atomic or maybe molecule dimensions self-assemble together according to the natural physical properties or an extremely applied driving force to give rise to large and more organized system. This process or this approach is techniques followed are the physical vapor deposition and chemical vapor deposition and spray conversion processing and sol gel process, wet chemical synthesis or self assembly. In top down approach, process starts from a large spaces and subsequently use finer and finer tools for creating correspondingly small structures. These two approaches are schematically presented in the figure. In these two figures, according to that, there are the advantage and disadvantage in both the approaches, which are estimated according to the speed and reproducibility and cost. And various nano manufacturing techniques are as follows. The first one, the mechanical alloying, then the equal channel angular pressing, then high process torsion, and last one is if consider nanolithography. These are the top down approach. And next, the slide is going to explain the difference between top down and bottom up approach. The first in top down approach is nothing but approach is from larger particles or maybe larger chips to the smaller chip. In bottom up approach, the approach is refers from smaller to the larger chip. The methods employed in top down approach, the second difference may be the methods employed are patterns and etches. In methods in bottom up approach, the methods employed are synthesis or self assembly. In the third difference is the production cost is high in top down approach and production cost is low in bottom up approach. And the fourth one is accessibility for material or device is less in top down approach and accessibility is more in the device is more in the bottom up approach. The selection of material is in stubborn in the top down approach, but the selection of material is level in the bottom up approach. The design tool or infrastructure is developed in the top down approach, but design tool or infrastructure is open in the bottom up approach. These are the major difference or maybe the comparison between the top down and bottom up approach. The top down and usually the top down approach and bottom up approach, okay, I have so many difference and disadvantages are there. Now the next is going to discuss the advantage and disadvantage of top down and bottom up approach. The advantage of top down approach, the large scale production deposition over larger substrate is possible. And second disadvantage is chemical purification is not required in the top down approach. The major disadvantage of top down approach, the first one is the broad size distribution is, for example, 10 to 1000 nanometer. The varied size or varied particle shapes or geometries, control over maybe deposition parameters is difficult to achieve. It is very difficult to control the deposition parameters in the top down approach. Some impurities due to like stress defects and the imperfection gets introduced in the top down approach. The bottom up approach, the major disadvantage is the ultra fine nanoparticle nanocells and nanotubes can be prepared in the bottom up approach. And the second advantage is deposition parameter can be controlled as compared to top down approach. The bottom up approach is very controllable type of approach. Third the advantage in the bottom up approach, the narrow size distribution possible. For example, 1 to 20 nanometer, okay, the size of that particles we can get produced. But as compared to bottom up approach, so top down approach, the bottom up approach is very cheap or maybe less costlier type of approach. The major disadvantage of the bottom up approach, the first one is not applicable for large scale production, because it is mainly applicable for the small scale production system. And the major disadvantage, it require or necessarily we can do the chemical purification of nanoparticles, but this chemical purification is not required in the top down approach. Okay, some are advantages and disadvantages we discussed, that is top down and bottom up approach, and some comparisons also we discussed, and the basics of that top down and bottom up approach we discussed. Based on this the top down and bottom up approach, the methods approach are used in nanofabrications. The bottom up approach is more advantageous than top down approach, because the former has a better chance of producing nanostructure with less defects, the more homogeneous chemical compositions, and better short and long range ordering. And next, the bottom up synthesis method implies that the nanostructures are synthesized onto the structure by stacking atom on each other, which gives rise to crystal planes. The crystal planes further stacking onto each other, resulting in the synthesis of the nanostructure. The bottom up approach can thus be viewed as the synthesis approach, where the building blocks are added to the substrate to form the nanostructures. The top down synthesis method implies that the nanostructures are synthesized by etching out crystal plane, for example, means the removing crystal planes which are already present on the substrate. The top down approach can thus be viewed as the approach where the building blocks are removed from the substrate to form the nanostructure. So this maybe this is this presentation or maybe this topic to the detailed, okay, idea or maybe introduction of top down approach and the bottom up approach.